So, what advice do you have to someone who's turning 30 in today's
Uh-huh.
world?
Well, my advice has always been to pursue your passion,
Mm.
whatever it is. You've got to love what you do. And if you do that, I mean, if you do it because, oh, well, how can I make the most money? You know, unless the acquisition of money is a big passion. Your Uncle Rob was a little bit that way. That was his passion. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
and he enjoyed it.
yeah.
And he had a passion for it and did it. But to say, well, let's see, I want a job where I can make enough money to do all this other stuff that I want to do, I would say, you know, rethink it and say, well, what is it that I just enjoy and don't even ask about the money? Professionally, for me, that's the way it was. I never went in and asked anybody, the boss, hey, I think I need a raise. It just, you just love what you do and you got compensated for how effective what you love doing was for whoever you were working for. Yeah, it's interesting that I had a cousin, Bob Featherstone, who became a vice president of General Electric. And graduated from when I graduated from college, I wanted to be a nuclear engineer. That's what I wanted to do. I mean, that was my passion, was to be a nuclear engineer. And so Bob Featherstone was in General Electric. I had an interview with Westinghouse. Well, General Electric and Westinghouse were big competitors. Nuclear-wise, Westinghouse had them beat hands down. So he said, well, you could come to work for GE. He said, but I'll tell you, whatever you do, whatever company you work for, understand that you're there to make that company successful in what they're doing. And if you keep focused on that and, pick the things to do that you enjoy for that, he said that's the thing best to do. And I had an offer from GE and an offer from Westinghouse. I went and asked his advice. And that's what he told me. He said, give it. So I chose Westinghouse. Now, guess what? As it turned out, all right, when I got to Westinghouse, I started working on nuclear reactors, and you got an assignment here, an assignment there, all over the place to see the kind of work you wanted to do. And when I got to nuclear engineering, I had an assignment, working with a bunch of nuclear engineers. I said, well, look, I really love this. I said, I really love this, you guys. And this is fantastic. I had a bachelor's degree in engineering, and I was doing stuff. And I said, well, this is the job I want. I'd like to have a job offer. They said, bud. He said, when you have your master's degree and are going for your PhD, he said, come back and talk to us, So that was, I got sort of a little deflated that happened. But then you move around the company. I came here to Baltimore, and the people in Baltimore, these were the guys that were working in research and development around digital equipment design or computer design or however you want to say it. And so, and I met a guy, you know, that was there, and he was so enthusiastic about stuff. It just grabbed the hold of me. And and I said, oh, well, you know, you got to be practical. I mean, your mom was hadn't been born yet, because that was that first year, 1958, hadn't been born yet. And so I said, well, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Worked with those guys for a while, loved it, loved this stuff, everything. I said, I can't believe these guys are paying me to have this much fun, learning stuff and trying different ways of doing things, of solving engineering problems that nobody was using in those days. It was just development. And then I had a fellow who said, well, Ed, he said, there's another place in Westinghouse. After a couple of years, your mom was born and pregnant again for Rob, and you know, I was working at Aerospace in Baltimore, and he said, you know, we got a job coming up, and he said, I think you'd like to do it. And it was the first kind of converting sonar signals into digital and then putting them in the computer. Now, somebody else did all the software kind of stuff. But remember, it's the first time this stuff had been done. Now, if you're in radar is miles away from sonar, miles away. I mean, it sees more, it's got, you know, but it's faster. And you could see it's going to take them a long time to get to digital. So I went with him. Boss that I had was unhappy with me. He, you know, it was almost like I had, you know, just done him, and they wasn't respectful of what I had and everything. So I said, well, I really like this. And the guy that I was with, he was there before me, and he had left to go to this sonar job. And so then I followed him, and he was wonderful. I mean, he was one of the smartest guys I ever want to meet. And I just loved doing stuff with the guy, loved doing the design. And we had a bunch of us that were all learning the same thing and making a lot of mistakes.
Yeah,
and,
that's cool.
you know, it's, you know, you're a young engineer, and you have to laugh. You know, if you went down and did something in the shop, these are old codgers that have been around a long time. Well, now tell me, what is this hole here for on your? I said, I don't know. We were using an old piece of equipment design and just putting our stuff in the box. And said, but you got to get the box built, and it's got to hold what you want, and kind of thing. And so you don't know what that is? No. It was like a thing that held the door open or something like that. And they used to just love seeing us, and because they could get us away, walking away with the tail between our legs. But you know, as painful as it was, you were learning stuff, but it was slow. Yeah. The learning was slow, but the rewards were unbelievable for me, because when I stood in front of my box of equipment and in my own piece of equipment, mine, you know, and made mistakes doing stuff, and this didn't work, then, and I have to find I usually found all the problems, but that's what you were doing. And there was a lot of satisfaction. And that was just the first really thing that I did in my life. Now, there were a lot of guys smarter than me, and I could see that around me. And I developed an ability to tell who was really good and who was trying to fool you.
Yeah.
And so that kind of drifted me more into management and team management. So the thing I thought I was going to be passionate about doing all the time became more at a different level, but always with the goal and that Uncle Bob Featherstone taught me was I doing right for the company I was working for to make them as successful. And we had one hell of a run for 30 years after that. Yeah. Initial stuff for me was when I retired, I was engineering manager at the Oceanic division. And so that's been always satisfying to me. And that's why I say I can't say what your passion is. I got a lot of suspicions. I've seen a lot of results of what you're doing. To me, you're doing the best I could tell anybody to do is to do the thing you love, and that's what I think you're doing. So I can't tell you, I don't think I can tell you anything. Yeah. But I think you're doing the right thing, and life is all about choices. Something will happen and you'll have to make a choice. I had times in my life like something happened. Well, I get tired of doing this doggone stuff, and I want to go do. I always wanted to teach a little bit. Why don't I do more of that or something? But I said, no, you made the right choices.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's funny because it's similar to my experience of when I finish a video. It's a lot of pride. I've spent so much time tinkering it. It's like I had a vision, and then I brought it to life. It was like it came from nothing. It was just an idea in my head, and now it's something other people can see and experience.
Oh yeah.
And but I think that the thing I miss, that sounds like you had, which was really cool, was like a group of people all doing that same thing, and you're all in this environment together of trial and error. And I think that's more difficult now in a remote work lifestyle, and but it sounds awesome. It sounds like that was a lot of excitement, kind of like a startup company now was your experience engineering early on, probably.
Yeah, when it took teamwork, a lot of teamwork, it did. And believe me, when you get somebody sets a problem on the table, and you get a bunch of guys around, and each one looks at it and says, "Well, I think we should do this," or "No, that's bullshit." And then another guy comes up and, "No, we should do this." And you're sitting there, and you're saying, "Well, how the hell are we going to get to? Well, if I can get these guys together, and work on it as a team and come up with something." Now then you say, well, who do you pick to do that? You make a judgment. You ain't always right. You ain't always right. And those are the things that for me made my life in engineering, because I wasn't technically the smartest I wasn't technically the smartest guy,
Yeah.
but I could recognize who was really smart.
Yeah.
I didn't take much. I could tell you every guy and who was good, what they were good at, and then how they could work together.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a one sort of a thing. I mean, it was, customer would come to you and say, this is our problem. Go find a basketball on the surface of the ocean floor without anybody knowing you're doing it. Okay? Now, well, how do we had technologies. It was unique to our corporation called side scan sonar, just a way of seeing stuff on the bottom with a sound picture instead of lights, because lights don't work that good in the deep ocean and all that stuff, or it doesn't work very far. Maybe as far as for me to the camera or something.
Is sonar's sound waves? Right?
Sound waves.
And
Radar is
light?
it's electromagnetic
Okay.
pulses. It's, fundamentally the frequency spectrum, the sonar is closer to audio, what you can hear,
Right.
but radar is the speed of light,
Right. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's a different ball game than that. And and radar doesn't work in the water. Okay? I mean, the radar didn't work in the water because, it's attenuation. But, so when you got the problem, and then in the business that we were in, that first piece of equipment that you built, they put it on a submarine and took it to sea. And it had to work. I mean, it wasn't like this was number 20, this is the 20th radar we've built, and, we've worked the bugs out of the first 10. That's the system you got. That's what I bought. If it doesn't work, fix it. And we had guys that, the genius that they had in working with the people in the Navy, this big thing was 20,000 feet of cable, 5 miles worth of cable. And at the end is something you're trying to see something with. And it doesn't behave. I mean, it's manipulating what that is doing from up here down there. And we had guys that understood that shit. And I said, a guy named Paul Spink, I said, Paul, how could you ever think of stuff like that? Well, you just think about it a little bit. And there are people that way. So, I
think I feel similar, like, especially, in my industry for sure, where I'm not like the most technical video guy.
Yeah.
I know a lot of friends are really into the like technical side of cameras and the digital, like what's the best image. And then I know guys who are super into the story, who are like really into film, like my friend Jeff, who's like he can watch a movie and then tell you the arc points and like why the writing.
Oh, yeah.
Like he can dissect it, and it's like I wish I had that, but I have like an intuitive kind of like knack for video, I think, but it's similar. It's like it's trying to find the right people. If I'm making a video project, how can I get him involved because I know he's good at that, or how can I get my friend to give me a camera recommendation? It's a similar.
But to me, making a movie takes a lot of teamwork.
Yeah.
I mean, when Harriet and I were in the Wedding Crashers, we were a bit part in the Wedding Crashers. I said, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
We got these hundreds of people, mostly sitting around to watch a small group of people filming a particular tiny segment of a story,
Yeah.
a tiny, tiny piece of it. And and you say, oh, I know what it was. Vince Vaughn was in the movie, and he had a part where he was making balloon animals with it. You probably remember. And the kid says, I want a bicycle.
Yeah.
And apparently the kid ad-libbed it. I want a bicycle. Come. It's like, no, don't you want a what do you call it?
Dog or so.
Yeah, dog or something. I want a bicycle. And all of a sudden, people were captivated by this young kid's. He was acting. I mean, just young. He was a young actor.
Yeah.
I want a bicycle. And so they go through, and this became an accidental happen. And that wound up in the movie.
Right.
But while hundreds of us were sitting around, the director, hey, Joe, come here. Let's watch this. Everything stopped while they were telling each other what this and the guys are going sketchy. They're going crazy.
Yeah.
Well, these guys don't know. With the film that they were making, they would shoot film for 5 days and ship it up to New York, and some guys up there are editing it.
Right. Yeah.
And this is the group of guys down here. And it boggles my mind. I mean, there is a parallel between what's being done and develop a movie that people will come out and watch and make money.
Yeah.
Right? And it's kind of like the first. It's got to work.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work,
Yeah,
well,
you
lose money, and well, where's the next
Yeah.
picture we're
And
going?
it's very passion driven.
Oh yeah.
It's not guaranteed to work at all.
No, not that
You
is,
gotta love to do it.
and you think you've got a good story, and maybe the story is good, but you can't seem to get the story, into a more acceptable, believable, sellable thing. And now they have more genius than that. They must have ways of filming stuff and saying, well, what do you guys think about this? And yeah, that's pretty good. They must have. I mean, because they have to keep redoing them.
Yeah.
So.
Did you see Oppenheimer, the new?
Oh, I gotta see that.
You gotta see it.
Yeah, it is.
Good.
But it's in the theater for 3 hours,
Yeah.
and I get tired fast, and I don't know whether there'll ever be a chance to see it, streamed.
Maybe you can't rent it. I feel like that's one of the ones. Maybe it's just in theater.
You can't rent it.
I can look, but yeah, I mean it was great. It was really worth. Because it's Christopher Nolan who makes like big budget productions. It was shot on all film. Which now everything's digital, but he shot it all in IMAX film strips, and I didn't know about. I mean, I knew that Hiroshima was bombed, but seeing the ethical weight of that, and seeing how much,
and that they understood,
yeah.
And that how much, I don't know whether the story was told about. I mean, people died in Chicago because they didn't appreciate the radiation. I mean, they should have.
Oh yeah.
But they didn't
Alamo,
necessarily.
Where
they did that. I think they lost a few people. I don't know whether that was out in the story.
No, it wasn't in the story. But in the story, there was a small chance. Like one of the engineers had said that there's a chance that when we press this button for the test, it'll ignite the atmosphere. And
right.
The world.
Oh, they didn't know.
And they were like, and Oppenheimer was like, yeah, there's a small chance, almost zero, that'll happen. But then they press the button. It's the idea that they could have just ended the world was like such a powerful moment.
Well, when you think about that, really an awful lot of things had to be exactly right when they pushed the button to get it to do what they wanted
Right.
to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that's, yeah, that is, now there's a one-off project that took a hell of a, yeah. Anybody that it was associated with that. I mean, I was being educated in being a nuclear engineer and
Right.
how to control the binary the nuclear reaction in a way that you could generate nuclear power. And for Westinghouse those days, nuclear power for submarines was a big thing. But I was working on the Yankee Power plant. It must still be, I don't know whether it's even still nuclear reactor in New England for generating power. You know, really, to be honest with you, today, nuclear power is a better answer. You know, that is a better answer than, I mean, solar panels and wind and all that stuff can do stuff, but nuclear power really should, there's a lot more emphasis, but it has too many detractors, I think. Yeah, well, what are you going to do with the waste, and what are you going to do with this and that? Yeah, certainly some points have to be worked out, but well, nuclear fusion doesn't have waste. And fusion is where you can take this cup of water and fuse. There's a nuclear fusion reactor. You're bringing stuff together instead of breaking everything apart. So you're fusing it, and that's been in research and development for 60 years, as far as I know. And they can do stuff with about they can take a little pinhead thing of water and do something. So there you go. It works, right? Yeah. Okay. I'll order 10 of those. But
Well, I got a question about, so like my experience of turning 30 is like, I feel like I still feel like I'm 12, but I also feel like I'm 20, but I also feel like I do feel like an adult, like I'm starting to feel like I'm both a kid and an adult at the same time. So I'm curious, like, that experience at 90, how do you feel, do you still feel, like, can you still have these moments where you feel just like you were as a kid, or do those memories reorient you in the same place, or how does that experience
I
feel?
think about it a lot.
Yeah.
You know, if there's one of the hidden benefits of reaching 90 is it gives you perspective. I mean, from a level, because, you can't function. I can't take a walk. I can't get on a bicycle. I personally can't. There are a lot of people that can.
Right.
And more power to them. But looking back, I think I've always been stuck on 18. I mean, I said, I don't see much difference. I felt the same. I do stuff the same. I like the same kinds of things that interest me. My youth was spent. My mother had to work. My father was in the Navy, during World War II. And so I was by myself except for Grandma upstairs. And if I didn't want to go to school that day, I'd go, I got to study. And I would do puzzles. I would do airplane puzzles and all this stuff, and then I would work with clay and stuff like that. Love doing that kind of stuff. Well, it wasn't the smartest thing to be at that, but I could get away from. I was alone a lot as a kid. We used to have an ox cherry tree, you know, really good cherries, Oxheart cherries. I would hang from the limb on my legs, upside down, and, you know, eat cherries. But I was very satisfied watching the world go by upside down. It was one of the best things I ever did. You know, see, this is really wonderful. And
That's funny. I did that too. Like, I would sit on the couch, so I would just look at the world upside down a lot. Like
yeah,
I did that a lot as a kid.
see, yeah. But yeah, you do think back, and I think back a lot more now. But a lot of things you think about is what you can't do anymore. I mean, like I say, I used to play a lot of chess. I liked playing chess. We liked playing cards, bridge kind of thing. But so we play Rummy Cube. I got to substitute Rummy Cube. But that's why I asked you about whether you played chess or not, because you play Rummy Cube so good.
Yeah.
And that's a good, yeah. It was a good link, yeah, between them. You ought to try it again someday.
Yeah, I should. Yeah, it was all the patterns and stuff. I just didn't get it. Like, he seemed to know, like, he was
Well, you
steps
do.
ahead of me all the time, so I was just like, I don't want to.
Well, you do, you know, we used to go to a bar and play at night. And then I was in the Maryland Chess League, and we went to the Maryland prison, and played, you know, so you playing chess with, what are you in for? Murder? Oh, okay. I resign. No, it wasn't like that, but it's, you know, it was fun dealing with these guys. But
Yeah, well, I guess off that question, because I feel like my 20s, there was a lot of like anxiety and angst and questions of like trying to figure out.
right,
But I mean, now that I'm 30, I feel like I'm kind of turning that page. I'm able to see it a little more broad, like have a little more perspective on those thoughts or that like that experience of anxiety or like whatever that is, or like being out of control. I think that's kind of the constant in your life is you're sort of in control but out of control because you're at the whim of everything in the world and in your life, if that makes sense. So I guess as someone who has decades of experience every time, did it feel like every time you reached a decade, you were looking back and having more perspective and finding more peace within yourself, or did that process kind of go up and down based on what was happening in each day?
yeah. If I made the peace, well, as I said, that decade that took me from Army to college to and to a thing, immediately 3 little kids, you know. So you're dealing with so much going on. I mean, I was immersed in my engineering fun, and it was fun, my engineering fun, while your grandmother, I mean, Carly, okay, your grandmother was raising the kids all day long. Yeah. Remember, these kids weren't in school yet, before school, and it wasn't like, you know, she wanted to teach school. I mean, she taught school. When I finished my senior year in college, she was teaching school while she was pregnant, just becoming pregnant. So when I think about that time, I was a lot of wrestling with where I'm going, because where I was going in an engineering sense was on its own path, following the passion that I felt, okay? But you had to also deal with the everyday life. Yeah. Kids getting sick, this going to happen. So when I had to work at work. When I came home at night, just take care, put Sue to bed and put Rob to bed, and Ricky was a baby, and I didn't have to worry about him so much. And we're talking about approaching my 30. So I wasn't thinking about stuff like that. So, and I can understand where you're coming from. That became a much bigger impact in our lives when the big change was recognizing that we didn't want to raise the kids in Glen Burnie. Now that was a very moving time. Now, remember, up to that time, my family everybody was living. I got my brother and my sister, and they're raising kids, and my mother and father were out doing stuff and doing things. And then all of a sudden, my mother died, my father died, and my brother died.
Wow.
Bam, 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 bam.
Yeah.
Just like that. And so we were in this mode in Glen Burnie where we knew, Carly and I knew, we can't raise these kids here the way we're doing it now. I mean, well, at that time, Carly was teaching school. See, the kids were all, when Ricky went to school, Carly started teaching at the same school. Sue and Rob was still in that school. So we made this big decision that we can't live here, and we decided to come here. Best decision. From the family point of view, best. Didn't have anything to do with Westinghouse or anything I was doing, except that I could get to work from here just as easily as I could from Glen Burnie. But this was life-changing. This was life-changing to us as a family. And that's probably the thing I dwelled on the most. Was that the right thing to do? I mean, it's costing us more money, and we had to, was this the right thing to do? And Carly and I superimposed on this was we were raised Methodist up in New York State. When we came here, we went to the Methodist church when we first got here. We thought this was the worst. He said, this can't be the same church we were raised in. And it was the Methodist church here was what you call fire and brimstone, kind of thing, and very conservative, and it still is. I mean, actually. So we discovered the Unitarian Church in Baltimore. Now you talk about working hard to do stuff. We got the kids in the car. We went to Baltimore to church while they were in Sunday school, got the kids, brought them home, turned around and went back up and watched Baltimore play football. Went to the NFL. I mean, it was crazy. It was a crazy life. That's why it was such a big transition for us to come out here. And then spiritual discovery has been a lot of my life since those days. I mean, we spend a lot of time thinking about those things, but just trying to think, second guessing decisions, not much other than perhaps first coming here. But now let me tell you, it's very easy for me to see right now that this was the best. This was probably the best family decision. Yeah. Everything that was decided that I ever decided, and Carly and I decided that this was.
That's affected generations.
That affected it has been, I mean, Harriet and I have made 40 years we've been here. Yeah. And so if I ever think about anything, I think about I think about that. I reflect on that a lot, and was always so happy, and we were always so happy to be here, and the family that we ultimately, we could never, how would I ever predict? How could I ever predict where I'd be today?
Yeah, of course.
It says,
Yeah.
I'm here because that's how it worked. That's how it worked out.
Yeah.
I can't ever say that I ever said, you know, what just that, did that the right thing, or did I do the right thing here? The only thing you might have done is, oh, why did you pick Christmas trees instead of wine, or something? You know.
Yeah.
But we never look back at it.
Yeah.
And if you really want to know, I mean, and one thing I do want to say to you, when I reflect on my life, as I look back from this perspective that I have, somebody said, well, what's the best job you ever had? You're going to be surprised. Was an engineer. Was a Christmas tree grower. Christmas tree growing, and go making all the goofy mistakes and stuff, and then having that little brief experience at the end of the year where people come and again, the tree, oh, wait, this is the most wonderful thing. And then somebody comes up, this damn tree had bugs. Here's your money back. And it was happy.
Yeah.
Everything was happy. Well, Mr. Kaplan, are you going to have a hay ride now? And, and where's Santa Claus going to be? And, and all that whole shtick of stuff that made it up was the most personally satisfying experience I've ever had. Deeply personal.
Yeah.
Not so. Well, you weren't much of an engineer anyway. I said, yeah, I guess maybe it says that too. Maybe it says that too. You can have guys that I work with. Yeah. So I'm trying to reflect, and there are probably many experiences in my life that probably the most vivid I can give you is I went into the Army. I joined. Everybody else was being drafted to go to Korea. Fight a war in Korea. Fight a war in Korea. I go to basic training. I said, I'm just doing this because I don't know what else to do, kind of thing. So I would join the Army. And I'm at 6 weeks of basic training. My exposure, didn't ever know a black person in my life. And the guys that I was taking basic training, all black guys, all 2-3 years older than me, right? And awesome exposure to a culture that I did not understand.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys, I says, I don't even know what world you're in. And it's just the way they talk to each other, the way they frankness about sex and this and that. And I said, God, I can't hoist all this, as scary as could be. And then you take 6 weeks basic training, you're standing out there, and they're saying, okay, they start at the top of the alphabet. So-and-so, Harrison, you're going to FECOM, which meant 8 more weeks of training in California and to the hills of Korea in battle. And a lot of guys are getting killed.
Yeah.
I mean, my neighbor across the road loved combat. He loved it. and he got himself into it, and he loved it so much. He didn't last 6 months. Bam, he was gone. He volunteered for every program, just loved that stuff.
Yeah.
And then, I said, that has got to, I could never feel that way. I'd be scared shitless.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm listening to all these guys. They're all going to FECOM. And I said, Ed, you're headed for Korea. You're headed for using that stupid machine gun and damn rifle that they taught you for 6 weeks. I never fired a rifle in my life. I never did any of that stuff. So it was like in a dream. I said, oh my God, what have I done? And that I was scared, really scared. And they called my name out and said, you're going to Vint Hill Farms, Virginia, God's country. What's that all about? And I said, you're going to cryptanalysis. What the hell is cryptanalysis? I said, I had a good chemistry degree. And I told him, I said, well, I want to do something that has to do with chemistry when you would go to the Army. He said, yeah, well, they both begin with a C. And that's about, And so it was like a giant reprieve because I know I would have been, I'd have been a basket case. I guess maybe I wouldn't. I suppose, you get, I don't know. I've done a lot of reading about Army guys in Afghanistan and they couldn't get enough combat. So, and I said, I know I could never have been that way. I don't think I could have ever been that way. So if that was a decision, if that was something that I was grateful for something happening good to me, I would say, and which I had no control. I had no control over it. I mean, it wasn't something that I chose. I didn't know what the hell the guy was talking about. All I knew was I wasn't going to California, at least right away. I didn't know what was in Vint Hill Farms, Virginia, for all I know.
Yeah.
So, but it turned out to be, a signal intelligence kind of thing. A lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. And can't say that I set the world on fire, but I loved doing it. Yeah. You listen, we intercepted the Russian radio traffic in Europe and tried to predict whether they were going to try to overrun us the next day. That was our only job. Make sure you're our early warning system. If you hear the guys doing a lot of chatter, you better tell somebody about it. Kind of thing. Yeah. So, it turned out to be fun, but that was a very scary moment in my life. Yeah. That is the most scary moment. I mean, you say, well, I remember when a car was coming at me and it missed me or something. I said, yep, that's the feeling I had.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like my generation, I think we went through COVID. Like it's interesting. Like I think the mental health, which, like, my 20s weren't as busy as yours in the sense that like I didn't like go straight from milestone to milestone to milestone. But I think a lot of people do. But I think my experience was more like I had too much time to think about every decision. I had too many options, too much. I think a lot of my friends experience like this overload of options and things you can do, as well as like everything's documented and recorded, and you know about the existential threats of climate change and like the world's falling apart with these leaders and wars and
polars. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't know how, if I was your age, I'm not sure, because it's driving me crazy. I mean, the polarization in this country is driving me crazy. But you remember when I was your age, you had all these options and things you could do and things like that. You know, get married, have children, get a good job, get married, have children, and you know, kind of thing was accepted, and everybody was doing it. Ask your, I mean,
All still together.
Harriet. Yeah, well, I mean, Harriet, like all of the kids in her class, they all married each other in high school, right? And a lot of them are still married, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
The mayor for many, Bob Willie and Bessie.
yeah.
Yeah, he was the mayor forever. He just lost his last election. I didn't know he was gonna run again.
Well,
So, yeah. So I doubt if Mayor Worley and said, well, let's see, what am I going to do here? I know what you're going to do. You're going to get married and have kids,
yeah.
and that's it. So that's a little different generation
Yeah.
to be raised in.
Right.
Now, it's enviable to be in the position that you are now and have the chance to see and choose, but they are choices. And the more choices you have to make, the harder it is.
Yeah.
I mean, my only choice, well, am I going to, I like this girl and I like that girl. Which one do I like the most? I like that one the most. Okay, that's the one I'm going to marry and have kids with. Okay. I mean, you know, that's the choice. Now, that's a difficult choice. I mean, I'm not minimizing the choice of a life partner or something like that. I mean, it's serious business, but it's still, you know, that's the choice you're trying to make, you know, and then to say, well, I've got these other, besides that choice, you got these other 5 different things you might want to do. Oh, are these possible for me? Well, with you, it is possible. Not so easy one, you know. In our time, not the possibilities weren't that. But I did have guys, instead of going to college, went to work on the railroad. A bunch of guys went to, you know, 2 of the best guys I know in high school. They were the smartest guys that I was with. When they decided to go into education, and they were going to the inner city of Syracuse. These 2 guys, Mario and Tony, they were going to change the way the black people were treated in Syracuse. I mean, Syracuse is not in the South, it's in the North. You know, they were going to do it. And they became principals of schools.
Oh, wow.
And I said, Tony, I asked him, Tony, how do you think it worked out for you? He said, I was either going to get killed or I was going to kill somebody myself. And he said, you know, he said, well, did you make any change? Wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to satisfy Tony. Now that's a shame, because he is a bright, bright guy. And still talk to him on the phone. He's a good guy. And nice to talk to. But now they made a choice. That was a hard choice.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of compassion and empathy to do that way. But then all that compassion and empathy to get wrung out of you. Yeah. But it might have been better than that for Tony, but just Tony's good. Tony is a good guy. I'll tell you a story about Tony. We used to go to school together, walk to school. said 8 years old, down and so I'm reading Indian books. I said, how to walk correctly. An Indian walks with his toes pointed straight forward, not, splay foot. I spent the afternoon learning how to walk with my toes straight forward. So my house is here, got to go to the corner. Tony's house is here, got to meet me on the corner. So I'm walking to meet Tony. He's over here. I'm so proud. I'm walking like an Indian. And I said, this is the great. Tony's standing there in the corner. What the heck's the matter? You got a broom up your ass? I said, no, I'm walking like an Indian. He said, well, you look like an idiot. So I said, gone. Indian walking, disappeared. But that's Tony.
Yeah, tell you how it is. Yeah, it's I think it's a common thing in the nonprofit or the if you want to make a change, you go into it so bushy-tailed and bright-eyed, and then because I had that experience in Peru where I was like, I'm gonna build a community center and it's gonna be like a YMCA here, but then you just realize how much this is a systemic problem outside of you, and you can give as much as you can, but it's not, the change is just kind of a drop in the bucket of like bigger issues. And I felt that a lot, like coming back from Peru. It was like a lot of like guilt or that I failed at like doing this big idea that I had of like changing or making some sustainable impact. But it's I don't know. I think it's a
Well, you sure as hell don't have anything to be ashamed of for the choices you made. I mean, I couldn't dream of making those kind of choices. Now, Tony and Mario did. I mean, and it was tough on them, and I know that. But that was where they were going. And that takes compassion, empathy, and that kind of feeling about other people and enjoying other. Rob, you got nothing. I mean, you've done more in your decade than I could ever dream of, doing. I mean, in terms of the variety and the people that you met and your perceptions of how people were. I remember that perception about the people near Lima versus the people out in the hills being, these guys over here hardly ever satisfied because they're all moving toward, and these guys over here were happy because they didn't know any better or something.
Yeah.
And I could see the reaction you had when you went with Ken to Africa. I mean, those are experiences. Wow.
Yeah.
I probably couldn't have those in a lifetime. I mean, I might have tried something like that, but I don't know what my circumstances would have to be for me being able to do that. But you having that freedom chose wisely. You chose wisely.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would, there aren't many people that could say, well, I did better more with, No, I don't think so. I mean, now maybe it's my bias, family bias, but you got two special parents. You got two of the best parents I think anybody could ever wish for. You and Jess are lucky guys that way. They raised you with good values, and hey, you put them to different passions. I see how Jess is, and, and I see how you are, and it's and I can't. You got nothing to be concerned about. Like, well, did I do this, or maybe and I know that some things are anguishing. I mean, I know that anytime you get faced with a choice, and you say, well, I can do this or I can do that, and but I've got to choose between this and that, and I really don't want to. I want to do both. Can I do both? And or something, and yeah, that's a hard thing to do. So, well, how do you think then you go forward with this? Do you think, well, I'm just going to have more of the same every decade? Am I going to be going through this whole? I'll just do everything, Lord, yeah.
What do you mean more of?
More of
Like these experiences
of your experiences, or what you're doing with your life, and what's rewarding you,
Yeah.
what's making you feel good to be doing, or whether it's making a movie bit. I know what you mean about them. I mean, I get a lot of fun. My most fun was making the movie about Matthew, mostly because he was so, he was so, photogenic, and because he was sitting in the bathtub with Jess, and they're sitting up, and I'm filming him and everything, and he goes, well, he's 39 now. And Jess is now 34. So he was pretty young, and Matthew turns his butt up and says, "Moon's up." It's one of the best. And I don't know if you've seen that, and then he's jumping up and down the bed, and I'm filming him. He doesn't have a stitch of clothes on. And just to show you the difference in brothers, Michael is very careful about that. And he's saying to Matthew, "You better stop that and put some clothes on. Grandpa's Pop-Pop's filming you now, and he's going to show everybody when you're 16 years old." He was right. I can't tell you the number of times Nate came over he went back and watched that Matthew growing up. So for years and years, and the favorite story was when Harriet knocked her shoulder out of joint. The kids, Michael and Matthew, were here. Michael ran, hid in the house, because Harriet was in such pain. You couldn't touch her. "Don't touch me! Don't touch me!" And we had to get her in the car and go to the doctors. And Matthew and Michael had to go in the car with us. And Matthew's going in, and the doctor, and she's got her. She said, "This has happened before," told the Dr. Smith, and Matthew's there, and she's getting smaller, and she's going to. "If you don't do something, Doc, she's going to be gone." And the doctor just absolutely howls. But yeah, favorite Matthew story.
I did learning how to water ski.
Yeah.
That's how come
Oh, really?
So I didn't realize I had to put more emphasis on my legs than on my arms.
Oh,
And so then the next time I went swimming, oops, dislocated shoulder. And
Yikes.
yes. But that's right. I mean, Nate, every time he came in, "Can I watch the night tapes? Or we forgot this or and he would sit there and watch it,
That's
watch.
Yeah, but yeah, I think to answer your question, I think the experience of like traveling abroad and like with Ken especially, or going to Peru, is like there's also this weight of it. Like there's a weight to the disparity. Like how can someone live like that and I live like this?
Right.
And there's a lot of I think that
Yep.
brought me into like a lot of questions of like why
Right.
am I like this and why are they like that? And I think that's definitely what drives Ken, is that same like,
Oh God, yes.
there's this same like, this doesn't make sense. Why do they have that? And he also feels this spiritual drive to like
Yeah.
fix and help. But I think so. Something that I need to figure out is like honoring those experiences. Like I think if I just live a normal life now, a normal American life, in some ways it feels like I'm forgetting all of those people that I interacted with in Africa or in Peru, or like I'm not doing their experience justice because I have this privilege. I'm living I have comfort and they don't. So there's sort of this nagging feeling of like, I can't forget about those experiences, but I need to do something with that emotion, you know? So it's like there's sort of this, like, that's sort of why I got into the nonprofit world and videos, trying to like do something with the emotion of like wanting to honor the people who have less than me, sort of thing. So I think moving forward, I think that's sort of like, I'm trying to figure out what that is. Like, how can I do my passion, but also do it in a way that
Is
is
making
an impact
an impact on
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's, well, you certainly, it was obvious in Peru, and for at least what you showed us in Peru with the, I mean, it sounded like a simple thing and wasn't that big a deal, but that community, and I mean, that was a hands-on type of community. But you have to recognize that it was a tiny cog. I mean, how much difference is it going to make on the big
Yeah.
picture? So how can I impact the big picture? And you know, I honestly, I sometimes wonder if there isn't some. You know, Kenny's got his thing that he does, you know, and he keeps that's a niche. I don't think he gets as recognized for it as he should
I agree.
by the world, but he's making a difference, and that makes a difference to him. And the glasses, that was a big surprise. I mean, you know, he told me that he was sitting in the back of the church service one day, and the story of Jesus healing a blind man brought tears to his eyes. And that's that's one of the kind of things, whether he was on his way to doing that and then recognized that that's what was going on. And that guy is, let me tell you, if you can stay close to him somehow, you can't go wrong. And I don't know how to, I mean, he certainly comes the closest to kind of figuring out things that you can do in this way. But so first of all, he had the wherewithal to be able to do it, because he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it plus he had to have the commitment, the time commitment to drop everything, you know, and he was doing. And so, you know, I mean, I always thought in terms of, when you were down in Peru and in the language, I said, damn, I think Rob maybe ought to get in the State Department. You know, get in the State Department and do. And I watched a show this morning about what organizations, what the government organizations were trying to do in Central America. They were trying to keep people in Central America. You know, they were trying to make a better life for the banana workers, okay, so that they wouldn't. But, you know, banana workers apparently is only a drop in the bucket. And they had to find bigger ways to do things so that people would be more satisfied where they are. And then to deal with that, you had to have the political,
Yeah.
self-serving political people were, and then the cartels. I mean, what a mess.
Yeah.
But I suppose you could go down to the border and spend, you could spend a month living amongst the Mexicans there, and probably would learn something. I don't know. I don't know whether you could do anything. And but that is a tough problem. And how from knowing Gustavo and those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, they came here legally on an H-2B to do the work that they did so that they could go bring money back home. That's what they were doing. They were exporting their labor to back home.
Yeah.
And they still had work to do. I mean, he was doing building or something, right? I mean, do you remember? He had a building,
Yeah, construction company or something.
but yeah, construction company. But why that began to dry up, I don't know. Whether it was Miss Mikulski, who was ramrodding all these H-2B stuff. And then when she left, nobody really had that kind of passion.
Yeah.
But there is so much need in the world going on. I suppose it used to be, the JFK era was the AmeriCorps. Maybe it's AmeriCorps now, but it was something else. You went and dropped yourself they dropped yourself in the middle of
Peace Corps.
the Peace Corps. That's it, Peace Corps.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those are, but to be honest with you, I'm always scared that people go into that organization and they can't do enough. They can't do enough to make it worthwhile. Now, can some?
For them, you mean?
Yeah, well, they're there to try to make an impact, to help the people change from where they are to have a better life. And Tony and Mario, we're going to go in and make a change, and it beat them down. So, wow.
Yeah.
I'd
be curious to hear their perception on it now. Do they still feel? Because for me, I've started to, in order for my own mental health, it's sort of like you just kind of got to say well, I did as much as I could, and I made there were ripples that came out of. what I did,
Yep.
But it may not have been the idealized version that I had, but it's helping me understand the reality of a situation. Like I can do this drop in a bucket. There are ripples, and that is good. It was a good thing I did, but it wasn't transformational. It wasn't history, but I still it was still worth it, and I'm still excited to do more things like that, even if maybe I'll get better at kind of making more of an impact because I better understand that experience and I better understand what I need to do. But I guess I'm curious what their reflections are on going in and doing this thing that they were so excited about and making change, because they had to have had some, just by that impulse, by default, I think you make some ripples, and there's someone has a belief in people and a belief in doing something good that spreads, even if you can't kind of tangibly track the metrics of it. You know what I mean?
And it's not, it's not an overnight. It's not, I deal with tangible stuff. Okay, we want a big chunk that does this job, and you work on the chunk, and the damn thing doesn't work, and it's supposed to have been working yesterday, and you fix and you fix and you fix and but you eventually get the chunk to go, do what you wanted it to do, not as fast as much, not as cheap as what you did, and stuff like that, but you're satisfied with the job that it functions. And that's very precise in engineering, and that's a great reward, fairly easy to come by based upon what you can contribute. But dealing with a lot of people and in societies that we're talking about, like all the migrants from Central America, wow, or solving the health problems of giant groups of black people in Africa, wow. I don't know. There was a Rotarian named Mike Olson that spent a career doing stuff like that all over the world, kind of thing. And sometime I can get you linked up to him and you can talk to him. But he used to live here, but now he's moved up to Baltimore. He's in Baltimore now. But to be with close to his daughter. But of course, a lot of the people that are high up in Rotary, and you're very, very committed people to do good. Like, my God, Harold Reese, was a Rotarian. He dedicated his whole Rotary life is dedicated to stamping out polio, the zero polio. And they get it, we've got it all done now, we're there, 99.9% there. Then all of a sudden they'd have a flare up here, a flare up in Afghanistan, flare up, because people didn't respond to the meds that they could do. They couldn't, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? And so, I envy people like that. But Harold was that, and he just preached that all the time, every time. Matter of fact, you go, Harold's here, he's going to talk about Polio Plus again. How much are we giving to Polio Plus this year? So it was usually just get a few more dollars and get a matching grant from the guy, but, and it's 100% committed. Now he was the head of state police, and before he retired and became active in Rotary. But there are a lot of people like that who are that committed to something, just like Kenny Wood, and it's a niche.
Yeah.
And I guess you should be asking Nick. You should be asking him that question. Now he's an expert, and I'm sure he's met his disappointments. Yeah, you probably have maybe even experienced them, firsthand. Things didn't go the way they were supposed to go and they drill a well and then it failed or something afterwards or something, and then he had to make sure he had a guy there that, I know some of the stories that he tells.
Yeah, it's messy.
But you have a lot of, there are people, one of the Rotary ladies, your grandson is the most wonderful guy. That kid is the smartest guy I've ever, that is the most wonderful video, and we raised $20,000 right away when they saw that video. Well, I said, That's just my grandson. Yeah. Well, thank you, but so you may be recognized in ways that you don't experience, but there are people who see how special what the kinds of things that you've chosen to do. So now the question is, well, what do you do with it going forward?
Yeah.
That's tough. That is tough, but it is tough.
Well,
Maybe just keep doing more.
yeah.
Just keep doing more the same.
Well, I think it's similar. I think for me, it's just following the passion, like you were saying. It's like
Yep.
I don't quite know what it is, but I know what feels
Hey.
right.
Feels good,
Yeah,
feels right.
yeah,
Made well, certainly you don't lack recognition that what you're doing is special. You say that is recognized by everybody in the family, by lots of people outside that I,
yeah.
touch base with. So,
Well, one more question for you.
yeah.
So, in terms of you talked about like the army and sort of these men who are like into combat and things, but I think now it's interesting for me and a lot of my friends and things. It's like there's not really the version of masculinity or a man or like being a man. So like I'm 30 now or about to be 30. It's like now I'm a man, but there's so many different interpretations of what that is. Like, what does it mean to be a man? So I guess that's my question: is what do you think it means to be a man, and what should young men strive to be? Because there's a lot of kind of toxic things, and there's a lot of different answers to that question. But I'm curious what yours would be.
To be a man. Well, today the question, there wasn't a time, the presumption of that question is a man and somebody saying, well, what is it to be a woman? Okay, well, it's what kind of a person am I? It's the person. And if that's a fair thing, it's to be somebody who is living a life that's worthwhile for that person, and that is satisfied in what he's doing. You got to say, well, if everybody were that way, we wouldn't have any problems. Yeah, right? I mean, if everybody felt that way, that we care about other humans, and that I do the best I can to showing that care. I mean, I see it with you all the time, just the kind of things you do with your nieces and your nieces and your family and your friends, and I mean, you're a good friend, I'm sure, and you can't measure it. You can't measure it in terms of wealth. Maybe some people do, but I don't think that that's what necessarily makes a successful person. It's someone who is at least generally satisfied with what he's doing. I mean, there has to be a little level of discomfort to keep you improving, okay, and growing that way. And, I mean, some people spend their life studying stuff and becoming the best historian or the smartest guy on a particular subject. Nothing wrong with that. Not to my feeling. Some people want to, be a community leader, or at least some portion. And the empathy and the passion you have for thousands of young black African kids, or Peruvians, or people in other parts of the world, and who could have better lives somehow. And if you can make a contribution to that, it seems like that's, to me, that's the kind of things you want to do, is feel satisfied in that. And that's pretty doggone good. Can't tell you what the choices are. I think you understand a hell of a lot better. You've done more meaningful living in 10 years of your life than I could ever imagine that I have done that, and it would I have been satisfied? Hell yeah. Okay. Yeah, I have a family, and I got a lot of good stuff to show and nothing to be ashamed of. But, you don't have anything you're moving in the right direction. And the direction that makes you feel like I am doing the right thing, and I'm pursuing the passions that I have, and that it's making enough of a difference for me. You made a good point. I really should call Tony up, and says, my grandson says, you did a great job there. But you didn't give yourself enough credit. What the hell did you do? Come on, you must have done something. Yeah. I think it was the end of. It was just frustration with him. They probably got terminated or whatever, made forced retirement or something, and they didn't feel like they got the job done. But it's a. I sure as hell can't. I don't feel very confident in I have so much respect for you and the choices you've made and how your parents have raised you, that I'm not too worried about what you're going to do. But it's your decision and choice. I like to be able to say, well, Rob, I've looked at this, I've looked at that, and I've looked at, and I don't know why the hell you're paying attention to me. Oh shit, you should be doing this. Ain't going to make it that way. I'd like to play a game of chess with you. I can tell you, I can make you a better chess player.
That'll work. That'll help.
Do you want to be a better chess player? I can, and I'd love to sit down and play with you, because what the hell? What else have I got to do? Kind of thing. But got a lot of admiration for you, Rob. And so, you're way ahead of everybody. You're way ahead of the game. I would gotta believe. But I like Ranger Rick. So I should look for Ranger Rick and Penguins now. Yeah.
Did you have a question?
Well, yeah, I was just hearing you guys talk. It was like, in my mind, the things you're talking about, and I'm trying to put my own self into, if I was born into today's world, but it's just so different.
Yeah.
It's just so different. Number one, that's why so many of my classmates married each other, and, you know, back then, very few of the girls from my class, some of them did go on to college, just a few actually went on to nursing and got nurses, you know, became nurses. And then even with them, you know, they got together, they got their nursing degree and everything, and they worked for probably 2 years, maybe 3, and in that time they got married and then had a child, and then the nursing went down the tubes. I mean, they just did everything centered around the children and all. Today's world, all the women, thank goodness, have opportunities to go and leave high school and go into whatever place you want to go, as far as college or career or whatever. And I think that's the biggest thing that makes it so different. That, I mean, I know women are so much different in today's world than they were 80 years ago or
Yeah,
whatever.
right.
It's just, you know, like even.
Well, that's men were different. I mean, as I said,
Well, I
told
think
him,
the women have
you know-
made the men different, quite frankly. Really, I mean, like my mother, for instance, most of her, very few, maybe, I mean, very, very few of women my mom's age ever got their driver's license or had, you know, used a car or were able to drive or get around or anything. They were stuck at home taking care of the kids, and that was it. So it's just so different today. I mean, and I'm not saying that there aren't girls or women who crave, you know, who don't want to go in some special career perhaps and look forward to having a family and children and, you know, of course thinking about, you know, can I handle both of these things? You know, can I have a family and still work? Or,
Yeah.
it's just different. I mean,
Yeah.
things that I didn't have to think about. And now in today's world, I mean, I chose getting married and having Mark and Michael Ann.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I'm thankful that it worked out well. I mean, Eugene was in the Navy at the time when we got married, but it's just, today's world is just so different. I mean, we see it every day when we're watching TV and stuff and movies and things like that. And, you know, even how people dress. I mean, we're interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, like my business teacher in high school, you know, if you took a job in an office somewhere, you better put an extra pair of nylons in your drawer, because if you get a run in your stocking, you gotta go change it.
Yeah.
Mrs. Dickerson, and she'd roll over in her grave today if she
Yeah,
saw
it's
people
true.
dressed in a professional way. You know, it's
Yeah.
just so different.
Yeah.
So I can see how, and I see it every day on TV, the difference, you know, with, you know, men and women and, you know, how long their marriages last and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it's just different. It's just completely different.
Yeah.
So I don't have any strong, I think the strongest advice is that you just have to take it a day at a time and think about, you know, where do I want to go, and be thankful for every day, be thankful for your health, you know, just, you know, looking, you don't have, no one, I don't think, well, dedication's important. If you're, you know, really important that I'm dedicated to this project or I'm dedicated to this job. But like I heard Ed say, you got to, if you're fortunate enough that you can enjoy your job, and it's not like going to work, it's like, and I was like that, like at the library. I mean, I loved working at the library and being with the libraries. I mean, all my jobs I enjoyed. But it was stressful at times when, early on, when Eugene and I had Michael and Mark. I mean, between the two of us, we had 3 jobs. Like, I was working part-time at the library, so I'd be home at night to take care of the kids. Eugene was working full-time, and then if I had a nighttime thing at the library, he would watch the kids. I mean, it was just things like that, but, and we see that across, that still exists, because we see that across the street with Rick and Heather, because she loves working at night.
Yeah.
And we asked her why. Well, Heather, how come you like working at night so much? Well, there, what did she say? Too many chiefs and not enough Indians if you work during the day. That's why I like working at night. That's what she said. And actually, another neighbor of ours that's a nurse said the exact same thing, that she liked
Interesting.
working at night because there were too many chiefs and not enough Indians during the day. But anyway, people can work it out, you know, if they decide, you know, I'm gonna get married, I'm gonna have a child or something. And in today's world, it's probably even easier because, gosh, back then, if it wasn't for Eugene's mother, I mean, she watched Mark and Michael Ann when I was working.
Yeah, there's no
They
big.
didn't have like Jess and Morgan have, you know, places for and they're licensed places.
Yeah.
They just didn't exist back then.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just
Much better if you're closer to grandma, to a
Yeah.
grandma.
Yeah,
Yeah, it makes things easier. Well,
but the issue is that grandmas of today are still very active in their
Yeah.
occupation or
Right.
you know, volunteerism or whatever. So grandmas, you know, back then, like I said, they didn't have a car or anything. They were very happy to watch a kid. Now, man, I got a car and I'm.
yeah. I gotta see a movie.
I mean, it's just different. It's
Yeah.
different. So it's adjusting. All of it's just adjusting and doing what you hope you can do. But honest to God, Rob, ever since you did that Chesapeake College thing,
Yeah.
that was just so good and it was just so funny. And I couldn't help but really be into it because I went to Chesapeake after Ed and I were married. I went to Chesapeake. You know, I was working at the library. But through the library, they had different programs where you could go to college and get a few more degrees or whatever. So I went up to Chesapeake, and I was a little concerned myself because I was 40 something, I guess, and I thought I'm going to be the oldest person here, and I wasn't. There were people like there were older people there. And I know I've told you this before about the girl sitting next to me one day when the professor said, for those of you who aren't able to do your presentation today, you're welcome to leave, and you were supposed to demonstrate something, and she said, you're welcome to leave anything you want here in the room today until the next class, just so it's not perishable. And the girl sitting behind me, it was probably just out of high school probably, turned to the guy next to her. Perishable? What's perishable? I thought, oh my God, where am I?
Yeah. I remember a lot of moments like that.
Heck, did she never take her lunch to school? What's perishable? It took my breath away. I mean, I couldn't believe my ears. I don't think I turned around and looked at her.
Did the guy know? Did the guy explain it? Or?
I don't even know.
Yeah, you just tuned it out then. Yeah.
It was hysterical. I mean, it wasn't hysterical at the moment. I mean, I was in hello. But afterwards, I thought, I just can't believe that.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I would like to ask do you have what you think is the answer to your question, or and the question of how do I proceed to the next, to be a better person? Well, better, that was my word, but better person. But that was the idea. So the question is, what do you think?
I think it's similar to your kind of first answer, which was like follow the curiosity and the passion. I think that's because I found even examples of like doing Emma's video, or when Emma was first born, and I just went to strangers and said, "Hey."
That was wonderful.
Yeah,
right.
But I think that's a moment of like, I just had this. I just went out into the world. I had a curiosity and wanted people to give people an opportunity to kind of share their blessings. Is like I was so pleasantly surprised at like how positive people were and how like happy
how open they were with it.
I was surprised too.
Yeah.
And they seemed like to really, you know, like you were a total stranger and you came up to them, but they just seemed so
excited, genuinely,
ready to participate.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I thought, wow.
But I think that's it. I think it's just following the like if my goal is to be a good person or make the most impact or do the best thing I can, I think it's just having conversations like this or following people who are also doing that or just kind of leaning into it. Because it seems like this Ranger Rick job is awesome, and it's tapping into my playful, like the community college video where it's just like I'm having fun with videos. I get to do that right now. but I'm still kind of looking for like how can I also make more of an impact with it. So I don't know what that balance is, but it's just kind of like I got here in this job by just kind of following the what I like, what I thought was fun, what I had passion for. So I think it's just kind of keeping
Whoa.
doing that. But
There's a talent in here that you could go to somebody who's a stranger off the street and ask them some complete, like the question, and why, it's a surprise to me. If it was me, I'd say, well, yeah, 9 out of 10 times people say, get the hell out, don't bother me. So that takes a talent to approach somebody. And then I also know, knowing humans is, Christ, nobody else has ever listened to what the hell I have to say. I have lots to say. And nobody, so yeah, here's what I think. Thanks for asking me, bud.
yeah,
But that takes a special skill to have somebody, respond to that. Do you get a positive response? And yet, I bet if you did a percentage of somebody that just went around asking people questions on the street, it'd say 90% of the people turn away. I can't. They don't even. They ignore you. They walk away and ignore you.
Well, you never know
But
when an opportunity is going to present itself, because in my life, I just was so fortunate from the very beginning, and whenever I was looking for or thinking about something or a job or whatever, it just seemed like it happened automatically. Like someone I knew somebody else, and they said, "Oh, well, I think Harriet's looking for a job." So when I worked for Congressman Mills, when I worked for Congressman Bauman, I mean, those jobs came. Well, the first one, the second one just kind of fell on itself, but the first one was Claire. Claire Wade already was working for Congressman Mills, and he was looking for someone, and so she said, Harry, you better come in, and so you just never know when that's gonna automatically happen, like, someone's gonna say, they're gonna know your talents, and they're gonna think about you, like, well, hey, you asked Rob Simmons about it, or maybe he's interested, depending on whatever the job is, but, I just think it can happen.
Yeah, you just gotta put yourself, just keep doing it. Yeah.
Well, it can't, it can be lucky, if someone, and they will. I mean, friends know you well, and they know your talents, and if they know there's a good job that you might be interested in, they're gonna say, hey, have you thought about this, Rob? Or,
True.
or have you contacted Rob? You need to call Rob Simmons. That's the guy you need. And just it might happen. It's a day-to-day thing almost. You just
True.
But
yeah, I would say I probably got rejected 4 out of 10 times for those. Like,
did you?
It's still real. Like but I think it's like the good outweighs the the rejections. Like 5 minutes of like, dang, that's But then it's like you get a good one and you feel the energy.
you don't see the ones.
I don't put those in.
That bother me. But you could tell though that the people that you did get responses to, it was like, nobody ever asked me anything, and I'm glad to tell you. If I'm always want to talk. I like little kids. Make sure, Emma. Yeah.
that would be really neat when Emma gets older and goes.
Oh, I bet.
That's going to be fantastic for her. So keep up the good work.
Well, do you guys, real quick while I'm here, do you want to do one because I'm going to do one for Owen when he's born. And I was going to make a video for Emma and Olivia, but it might be cool. I was thinking it'd be cool if you wanted to do like a time capsule, if we wanted to do like Emma's 10th birthday or 5th, or like, if you wanted to say something now that I could then schedule as a video to be uploaded when she's like 10 or something. Would that
Wow.
I don't know what to say. I think
Yeah.
because I guess
You-
the thing I think about the most now, and that's mostly based on things I hear on the news that I wish I never heard and all. But when I think about Macy, and she's just, this is her last year in middle school, and she'll be going to high school next year,
Yeah.
and that's a concern. I mean, she's very smart. I mean, she does really well in school and everything, but it's that age group and stuff that I see on TV that I think, oh gosh, I'll be glad when she gets past this.
Yeah.
And like Morgan says, we were talking about her blood pressure last weekend, and she said, oh, my blood pressure's great. And I remember last year when she did have blood pressure, and she said, anybody teaching middle school is going to have high blood pressure.
That's a good point.
Right. Well, I'm pretty out of gas, but it's coming. Yes, I'm sure that chances are pretty good that I'm not going to be here in 10 years, but Harriet will be here for a long time.
Got 20 or 40.
Yeah, but
Well, I'll be back.
I would like to sit down and have a chat, but I'm getting worn down, and
it's worn.
but it's very emotional
Yeah.
for me. That's very draining to resurrect and answer these things, and I just have to keep saying, Rob, you've had the most wonderful 10 years. And your growth is, I always think, how would I do that in that 10 years? He said, no way you could do that stuff. Learn a language, go down there and mix it up with these people, and love this whole thing. I'd be like, what the hell's going on here? It just didn't, your maturity is amazing. And maybe, yes, it's the time you were raised and maybe the way things are today, obviously. It's like, compared to what was going on, like Harriet and I said, yeah, get married, have kids, and figure out what you're going to do, where to live, and
A lot more opportunities, and find them because of the internet and the communication that's more, open, easy to go,
Yeah.
put a question in it.
Yeah.
And you get some response, like that might lead you to somewhere else. Or just, it seems like a lot more opportunity, especially like more opportunity, not to necessarily, I'm gonna live on Tradavon Avenue in Eastern Maryland for the rest of my life. It's like, there's just more opportunity, things that I wouldn't have thought about, at the time that I was a teenager or going, it's just so different. And great that there are many opportunities out there.
Yeah.
Just, and usually, and a lot of them I think are opportunities that help other people. That seem to be able to, to have an organization that reaches out to help solve a problem or whatever.
Yeah.
But, back then, you taking care of the kids, I would be going to Brazil.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy with the way things worked out. I wouldn't want to change it for the world. Everything was fine. But it's just when you compare the times then, even when I compare my mom's times to my time to now. And Ed talks about his grandmother a lot, about what would grandma say.
My God. I'm becoming my grandmother, I know that. I mean, she was totally disgusted with society, totally.
Yeah.
Best thing to do is, she was deaf, put her headset on and listen to the word of the Lord. And that was the way it was.
Is that the grandma that used to watch you when you were?
Yeah, well, she didn't really watch
She
anything.
was there.
I was telling him, she was upstairs and what could she do? She could see me running out in the street in front of the car and, she might be able to yell out the window, watch out, or something, but no, you're left to our own devices. But it is intriguing that you're thinking about, okay, I'm gonna gather material now for when Emma's,
Yeah.
when she's 10, when
Yeah.
she's 20.
Yeah, it's just interesting. They have those time capsules of.
This
Yeah.
time, okay.
Yeah.
I'd be glad to contribute to that, but I have to think about it.
Yeah, no worries.
But it's a good, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this. This was cool.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
You reinforce all the respect that I had for you. Reinforced it.
Appreciate
And
it.
the love.
And we've always thought that,
Huh?
and we've always thought that Sue and John
Yeah.
had to be the best parents
Mm.
in the world, maybe, I don't know, but very good parents, very,
Yeah.
very good parents,
Mm.
And some of the things that you guys probably thought, oh, they're not gonna let me watch any TV. There were things that were somewhat different, but very good to
Mhm.
do.
Yeah.
And it's just like parents today, they limit their kids from sitting in front of the computer all day long or something. But,
Mm.
they were very, conscientious about trying to keep your activities more broader and more open and not
Yeah.
sitting in front of the TV all day. And then your Christmases with the big boxes.
Yeah.
Oh, we thought that was really good
Yeah.
and a good image, really. I mean, for people to not think they have to. My kids are going to be unhappy if I don't go out and spend $500 on each
Mhm.
one or $1,000 on each one. And you guys are always very happy.
Yeah.
We
That's
would
true.
go over to your house at Christmas morning or whatever, and you couldn't have been any happier. I mean, you just seemed
Yeah.
much happier than giving them a box of a couple of shirts or a pair of jeans or something. Nah, who wants clothes? We
Yeah.
don't want any clothes for Christmas.
Yeah.
Well,
Memories.
a thought occurred to me as I was thinking about what you'd say. And being 30 and saying, well, I've got all this in front of me and and I would say to you, if you make any changes, make them small, incremental. You're pretty good the way you are,
Yeah.
So don't change too much.
Yeah.
Maybe here and there, okay? But you're gonna have to decide on the increments
Mm.
and how big. And sometimes it can be big, I realize that.
Mm.
As I said, we went to a State Department presentation and I thought, boy, this is, and that's when you were starting to go to Peru and all that sort of stuff. Rob ought to think about a career in the State Department, as well as Blanca's son.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Not Augie, but Sasha.
Sasha,
Yeah.
yeah, it was,
Yeah.
but
He's a smart guy, Sasha.
tiny.
Have you ever met him?
I met them when they were kids.
When they were
They had
little.
the go kart, or they took our go kart
Oh,
or
yeah.
something.
Sasha and Augie, they're completely different too. Well, they're half brothers. They're not,
Yeah.
but and they are different. Both good in their own way. But Sasha's had a lot of government jobs, hasn't he? I think Sasha's had a lot of government jobs, or more than one, I think.
Yeah, he keeps making changes and stuff, but he's searching. But it's hard to, I'm sure he's got the same, he would like to make a difference in some,
Yeah.
but,
Well, I can help you put the room back together.
oh, that's not a big deal. Can I
Yeah, you can go.
disconnect?
I was just talking to your mother the other day about needs to put the room back
Yeah,
together.
okay.